Okay, for the third part, we're going to do, again, something new. We're going to learn how to write on a file. So the first part that we're going to take care of, because it just makes logical sense, is actually how to add a new entry. Yep. So when I press the add entry button, as we know, it's going to load this view. I want to be able to fill in this information, press the add entry button, and two things need to happen. First of all, I need to create an object from the class that I created. I also need to add that object into the array list, but parallel to that, I'm going to need to add that into that file, text file that I said we're going to create, right? Those two things are going to happen parallel from now on. Every time that I add information into my array list, I need to replicate it on the file. Every time that I read from the file, I need to make sure that my array list is also having the same information. So how do we do that? Let's go with the writing part first, okay? So first of all, that's gonna happen when I press this button, right? This is the button that is actually going to write or create a new record. So how do I do that? First thing that I do is I need to read from each one of those text boxes that I created. So first of all, I'm actually gonna move this up so we can modify it here at the top. It's easier, okay? So first of all, I'm gonna need to create all of those attributes. So remember that because we're reading from an fxml, we're gonna use the fxml comment, and I'm gonna need to read the date and all of those text boxes that I have, right? For the description and all of those. So let's do that. Those are actually, let's see, I'm just gonna bring this view over here and I'm gonna put it on the side so we can see both of them. That way it's easier. Yeah? So here they have these 3 text fields, the date picker, and a label. That's what I need, right? So let's create those. I'm gonna go and open here my controller. And in my controller, I'm first of all going to create all of the text fields. So I'm gonna do text field, txt description. I'm also going to read the txt value. And I'm going to read the txt category over here. There you go. Those 3 are done. I'm also going to need to create the date picker. So I'm going to create a date picker that it's called date picker. And I can even initialize it if I wanted to using the constructor. I'm not using the constructor for these ones, but that's okay because they have a default constructor, so they will be created anyways, okay? So I need to type here the semicolon. It's not letting me. There you go. So I have those 2, yeah? The other thing that I need to do is that I'm going to need to have that label as well. I forgot to do the fxml for this one. So let's do add fxml. There you go. And let's do that again for the label. So I'm going to create a label object here that it's called, what do they call it? LB results, I believe. LB result, yes, here it is. And that's it. I'm going to need to import this class. Import it, ready. Perfect, so I don't need this anymore. I'm gonna go back to my method here and I'm gonna start reading what my user has written on those boxes. As simple as that. So let's start with maybe the description. I'm just gonna create a string for that. And I'm gonna go to my text box and I'm just gonna get whatever is written there. Yep. I'm also gonna get maybe the category, which is also simple. I'm gonna call it cat, and that's gonna be the category.get text. Done. Now the value and the date are slightly different. The value is a double, right? So I'm gonna need to be careful to convert this into a double, right? So I'm gonna do that. Double dot parse double, and then I get the value from my text. There you go. That's a double. There's no mystery there. And with the date, it's slightly different because I want to save it as a string. If you remember here, I said that each one of the entries are going to have the date as a string, which is easy to manipulate. But what I have here on my controller is that I have a date picker, right? I don't have a TXT. So I'm going to create a date based on that date picker. The way to do that, it's going to be that I'm just going to take my date picker. Yep. And I'm going to say get value. That's going to get the date, but that's going to be of type date. So I'm going to convert that into a string. That's it. There you go. So now I have all of those values, which means that now I can actually go ahead and create a new entry. Okay. So I don't want to do that here because this is only going to take care of taking from the GUI and throwing into the logic. My logic is going to be handled with these two classes that I created, with these two classes that I created precisely for that, right? So I'm going to need to create an object from my list class that is going to be used in both files. Since this one is going to be used in both files, I'm going to make sure that I create as a static one so it doesn't change. So I'm going to do a static personal finance list. I'm going to call it PFL. And that's going to be equals to a new personal finance list. I'm going to create that object so I can manipulate from there. That's what should be, okay? And of course, as you may imagine, I'm going to need to have methods there to add a new entry. So I should have here a way to add a new entry using my array list, my PFL class, right? So let's go back to our personal finance list, which we haven't written, and let's create a method for it. Let's create a method public, maybe make it void, and let's call it identity. Sounds appropriate. And let's say that this one will receive a personal finance entry object, okay? Call it new entry, okay? So we have done this before. What we're gonna do is that we're going to go into the list that we created and we're gonna make sure to add the new entry into it. That's basically what this one is going to do. But remember that I said that we are also going to need to include this on the text file. So this is the part that is going to be new for us, right? But before I do that, I'm going to conclude what I was doing here in my controller. In my controller, I need to make sure now that I can use that object that I created to manipulate my list, yeah? And I'm going to say, go and use the method add entry to create a new entry. To create a new entry, I need a personal finance entry object. So I'm going to create a anonymous one, and I'm going to use my constructor. My constructor requires a date, which I have, and a description, which I have, and then I'm going to say value. It's not auto-completed for me. And finally, a category. Yeah, there you go. So we're creating a new personal entry object, personal finance entry object that will be added to the list. Yep, nothing new or before all the way there, okay? I'm also gonna make sure that I show that that has been done. So I'm gonna go to my label result and I'm going to change the text of that one to say entry added successfully maybe. And maybe another thing that I should do is to clear my text boxes. So if the person wants to add another new item, they can do that as well. So I'm actually going to create a method for that, a separate method for that. So I can reuse it. Let's create a method here, clear. That is going to go through all of my text boxes and it's going to clear them. So I can either set the text to nothing or just clear. Let's do the set text to nothing. And let's do the value as well. So it empties those. And let's take that date picker And maybe let's set the value to now. What about that? Okay, so that's what the clear method is going to do. So after I add a new item, I should maybe call my method clear and then say the entry has been added successfully, and that's done. So for now, I haven't done anything of writing on permanent memory, but it should work at the moment, right? I should be able to add an entry, go and pick a date, add a description, I don't know, coffee, add a value, add a category, click add entry. It's going to clear this up and tell me that the entry has been added successful. Yeah, but it's not fetching them just yet. So we'll see how to fix that. Okay. So like I said, I want to handle the logic from the inside. So this add entry method, that it's part of my list, it's going to make sure that I add these to my array list, but also to a new file. So how do we do that? So like I mentioned in class, we are going to use one of the two methods that I will be mentioning in class. The one that I'm going to use is the file writer and the buffer writer, okay? So I'm going to need to create those objects here. I'm going to go ahead and create a file writer. So I'm going to write, not read, a file writer object. I'm going to call it FW. And I'm just going to use the default constructor here that requires for me to create a file or to have a file. So I'm going to create an anonymous file, a new file. And that file, I'm just going to give it a name, whatever name I want to give it. So I'm going to call it records. Okay. That's going to create a text file by default. Okay. And I'm going to set this value to true, which is the append value. And what that does, like I explained in class, is that if the file already exists, I'm just going to add to it. If the file doesn't exist, it's going to create the file for me, okay? This is going to tell me that I'm also going to have here an IO exception problem. So again, I need to make sure that my method throws an IO exception if it finds it, okay? There you go. Now I'm also going to create a buffer writer object. I'm going to call it BW, okay? And this one is going to use a constructor that requires a file writer on it, which I already have. FW. There you go, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is that I want to write on that file. So I'm going to use my buffer writer and the method write to write on my file. So I'm going to take the object that I just created, which is the one that I receive, the one that I receive here as a parameter. Yeah, that is called the new entry. And I'm going to, and here is the part where the toString that we created is going to come in handy. I'm going to convert that into a string, and I'm going to write that on my file. I'm going to write that as a string. Sorry, weird noises scared me. Okay, so that's what I needed to string. So I can write on the file this object, new entry as a string. And I'm going to make sure to add a new line after that, so that I write the line and then I move to the next line. So the new object will go on the next line. Yep, pretty standard. Like I mentioned in class, remember that every time that you write or you read, for that matter, you need to make sure to flush, which is to clear the memory that has been used for this. Make sure that you close both accesses that you have open. And there you go. That should do the trick. So let's see. At this point, we have no file name records. Doesn't exist. If I go right now and try to run my application, this one, because I just ran into an error on my add entry method on the controller. Since the add entry method is now accessing a file, then that one can also have the possibility of throwing an IO exception. So I need to make sure to add it to my signature here as well. Sorry, I forgot about that. Let's see and run. So just to review, because on my list add entry method, I'm trying to write into a file, I need to throw an IO exception. And since this method add entry is being called from the controller, then the add entry method on the controller also need to throw the same IO exception. Run. Now no errors. I'm going to say add entry. There's nothing here. I'm going to create a new entry. Coffee. We'll spend 200 on that for food. And I click add entry. That is clearing, allegedly adding successfully. And now let's see if it actually did what it was supposed to do. So if let's add another one just to test here, maybe today. Order for 2:30 in travel. Add entry, I have added 2. Now I can close this and let's see what happened. So now, if I look over here, you're gonna see that into my files, I now have this new records file, yeah? And this is just a plain file. But if I open it up, you will see that what that file has is the 2 records as a string, the date, description, value, and category. Move to the next line, and then I have the other one, right? So every time that I open my application, right now I'm not reading, remember I'm only writing, so it's only modifying this file, but not actually reading on it just yet. Let's add another one. Let's say a third one for 20 on the category food again, right? I close it and look, it's added. So now I'm writing successfully into this file. Yep. Perfect. That's the third part. You're done.